Yeah.
Yep.
Hello, my name's John Lyons. I work at an agency called Gasp, and I'm here today really to rain on your parade and slaughter some of your heroes by making the case that creativity is dead. Creativity is dead. So just as a bit of a top-up, we've had a little bit of a talk about AI earlier. I've played with AI for this deck. I would have had to, let's be honest. So some of the images you'll see will look a bit like people you might see. So that's me. Marketing is no longer a dark art. Andy Nairn's not here yet, good, because I've got one of him that really isn't very good. To be honest, he's not going to be happy about it. But so the case I'm making is marketing is no longer a dark art. Marketing is a science. That's also me. I've worn this so that I look more like it because that guy's a lot more handsome than I am. So that's my take, but what say the so-called legends of our profession? Let's start with Bill Bernbach, the legend, the B of DDB. He says advertising happens to be not a science, but an art. I say bollocks. George Lois, for those of you familiar with him, you might recognize the setup that I've done here in Midjourney. George is one of the legendary kind of Mad Men era ad creatives. One of his great stories is where he was pitching an idea, the client wasn't buying into it, so he climbed on the edge of this skyscraper and threatened to throw himself out the window if the client didn't buy the idea. The client bought the idea. But George says, the scientists of our profession wildly miss the main point about everything we do. I say that times have moved on and that what George is saying here is no longer relevant. Steve Jobs, widely recognized as one of the greatest marketers, particularly one of the greatest brand developers of all time. He says, people don't know what they want until you show it to them. That's why I never rely on market research. I say, if you're not relying on market research, you don't know what the market wants, you don't understand the market. Nothing is more important in marketing than market and orientation. And this goes flying in the face of that. So again, I say, Steve Jobs, take your phones, stick them. Science has given the current era of marketers a better understanding of how marketing works than we've ever had before. So back in their day, a lot of this stuff hadn't been developed, wasn't known. There was more room for the lone genius, which is what we've seen in Mad Men, right? Don Draper kind of having a great idea. But science has given the current marketers a much better understanding of how it works. So I'm going to show you a few of those, talk you through a few of my heroes. So this is Neil McElroy. In 1931, he wrote what's now known as the McElroy Memo. And it, for the first time, defined brand management. So he was at P&G. At that time, everything was at category level. So they had however many soap brands, I don't know, but they were all managed by the same team. So how can one brand stand out against another? So he invented brand management. And what he also came up with is, for me, what is still the correct way of doing marketing. You start with diagnosis, so you do your market research. You then look at your strategy, and only then do you deliver tactics in the marketplace. And there it is, just typed up little memo, but that's completely changed the world of marketing and brand management. Through Byron Sharp and the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, we understand how consumers actually purchase. Again, this isn't about pretty ideas in your head. This is about what people do that is going to drive the bottom line of a brand or a business. We understand mental and physical availability, i.e. knowing that something is available if you come to need what that thing is. And more importantly, being able to pick it up. So if I'm thirsty, doesn't matter whether or not I remember Pepsi. If it's not physically available, I'm not going to buy Pepsi. But then if I've never heard of Pepsi, I'm probably going to pick up something I've heard of. So it sounds simple, but it's really important. The importance of light buyers. So we talk a lot about retention. I myself have worked in loyalty in the past. We talk about retention, we talk about loyalty. What we've learned from how brands grow is that the vast majority of any brand, and I mean any brand, however much people think they love it, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Oreo, 50 to 60% of their sales within a year are for people that only buy once in that year. So we understand the importance of light buyers. And the double jeopardy law. Double jeopardy law is trying to think of a scientific term, it's a fucker. Basically, what it says is that the bigger a brand you are, the more market share you're going to have and the more loyalty you're going to have from your purchasers. So just as an example here, because I know we were all talking about Chinese toothpaste brands earlier. So this is an example of Chinese toothpaste brand growth, and you can see the vast majority are coming in from one-time purchases a year. From Byron's colleague, Jenny Romaniuk at Ehrenberg Baxter Institute. So we understand from her how brand assets work. For me, this is one of the most groundbreaking things of the last decade or so of marketing. So we understand the concept of distinctive assets. It's not just about having pretty logos. It's not just about having colors that people like. It's about creating distinctive assets that when people see them, they understand it's your brand, and they kind of drive that mental availability. We understand about use of brand codes, making sure that we get those out as much as we possibly can, so that at every opportunity, when someone sees something that a brand has spent money on, they will know which brand it's related to, not just seeing a burger and thinking, oh, that could be any burger company. Unless if you're the market leader, because if you're the market leader, double jeopardy law says that you're going to benefit more than anyone else anyway. And we understand category entry points. So category entry points are a big shift from just talking about category, where brands would say, okay, I'm a fizzy brown water with sugar in it. We need to beat all other fizzy brown waters with sugar in it. The fact is, what you need to do is to come to mind from people when they're about to enter the category. If I'm thirsty, I might want to buy some fizzy brown water. I might also want to buy some water or a cup of tea. But it's that category entry point is the important thing of understanding why people come into our category in the first place. And we understand that through Jenny. And here she has a distinctive assets grid, which is brilliant. So whenever we do a brand audit, we look at the assets that are in place, and uniqueness and fame are the two important things. If you have fame, it's fantastic, of course, that's what everybody wants in branding and marketing. But if it's not unique, then the fame isn't really driving too much for you. So in the bottom here, where we've got low fame and low uniqueness, get rid of them or test them, but they're not really worth doing much with. Where there's high uniqueness, low fame, then there's investment potential. Why aren't people seeing it? Why isn't it famous? It's unique, it could be doing a job. If it's famous, but it's not very unique, don't use it on its own. Because again, people will just see the burger and think, oh, burger, I'll go for Bleecker, Burger King, I'll go for McDonald's. If they see the burger with a golden arch, then you're not using it on its own, and suddenly you are making that brand assumption. If it's high uniqueness and high fame, use or lose. That's yours, that's where you're going to win the marketplace. If you don't make use of it, you're going to lose your position. This is my favorite slide. So for those of you familiar with Uncle Les and Uncle Pete, so Burnett and Field, the godfathers of effectiveness. I decided to ask Midjourney to show me what they look like as Little and Large, the well-loved 1980s comedy partnership. Now, through Burnett and Field, we understand the value of brand marketing. We understand the idea of long and short marketing. Short marketing being activation for short-term sales, but long-term marketing, brand marketing, building the salience, building the mental availability, being able to quantify future sales through that. And I'm not going to go into too much detail on ESOV, but excess share of voice. So we understand already, and we've understood for some time now, that there's a relationship between our share of voice as a brand, i.e. how much noise we're making, how much visibility, how much recognition we have versus others in our category. We understand there's a relationship between that and share of market. What Les and Pete and others have been able to show, and Nielsen have proven, is that actually there's a direct correlation between potential growth in your market and your excess share of voice. Excess share of voice is literally just your share of voice minus your share of market. So if you've got a 30% share of voice and a 10% share of market, excess share of voice is 20. Every 10 is worth a 0.5% market gain in the next year. So really, really straightforward stuff here that's showing us how we can grow our business. And this is their very, very famous graph. You might have seen this before. Sales uplift over time. So what we see in the first kind of 6 months or so, sales activations will work on their own. And we see this through a lot of D2C brands and kind of startup brands. But once you start to get longer term, it's the brand building that drives long-term sales growth. Now, I like to talk about this as kind of future sales. And when I'm talking to a new client, I talk about it as future sales because that quantifies for the CFO, for the people in the board, that This isn't fluffy brand marketing. This is creating future demand, and through some of the things that I've already shown and will be showing, we can quantify that. Dr. Grace Kite is one of the great econometricians. I'm glad I got that one out. So we understand the impact of the marketing mix. Some people call it media mix, there you go. Econometrics, and basically what econometrics is, it's the granular modeling of everything that affects sales and revenue across a year. And they break it down so that it covers things such as weather changes, it covers international and national events, so that we can really focus on everything that affects sales and revenue and see exactly what part of it marketing plays and where it's going to play and how much it can grow. And what that means is, moving further forward, planning into the next year, we can confidently predict what our marketing activities are going to deliver to the bottom line. So, up yours, George Lewis. And here we see another thing that she's talked about as well, about really where people come into brands. So we've had attribution models on digital for quite a while, where we track stuff like people seeing an ad or seeing a social and clicking through and liking and subscribing. The reality is that sales don't begin online. They begin in the consumer's mind. And what we see here is how TV feeds traffic through search, which feeds traffic through to a website or through to a brand. So there's whole lots of ways that your purchases are driven. And this is just one example of that. And this is probably the only one that I could confidently get up and explain because it's really clever stuff. And I'm not. We understand how attention differs by platform. So this is Professor Karen Nelson-Field. She's brilliant. She talks about active versus inactive attention, and also digital versus traditional. So there's an elasticity in human attention, actual attention. And one of the things that she's shown is that about a quarter of viewable content, stuff that you'd be paying for as an online ad, for example, only about a quarter of that is actually paid attention to. So active attention is when you're taking participation in something. Inactive is when you're dismissing it. And there's a huge difference based on the digital versus traditional. And I come from a digital background, but I'll go with this because it's true. It's been proven. It's science. So when you're scrolling on LinkedIn or Facebook, because A, it's smaller, and B, because you're in the motion of sweeping past, you have less attention. Your attention has less value than if you walk past a massive fuck-off great billboard. So what Karen is really saying to us is massive fuck-off great billboards work better than just digital. But working together, that's where we get the marketing mix that we talked about before, you get more value. So one of the things as well, which I should have mentioned under Dr. Grace Kite, is that spending the same amount of money on 2 channels will do more for you than spending that amount of money on just one or other channel, regardless of what the channel is. You get that extra effect, you get that extra impact. But understanding how they're treated differently gives you a much better way of planning your media spend. Well, don't get ahead of yourself. And we understand what makes effective adverts. This is Orlando Wood. He's written some brilliant books on attention economy, and he works for a company called System 1 who track what works in adverts. So he talks about emotion driving response. Fluid devices drive recall. So fluid devices are any device that you will recognize over time. So it could be the golden arches for McDonald's, it could be the purple of Cadbury, it could be the Duracell rabbit. All of these are fluid devices, but also sonic devices and music. They have a great impact. So we've heard a lot, we've kind of sat and watched over the last, I don't know, decade. John Lewis practically invent the idea of the Christmas advert. It's become the UK's Super Bowl in many, many ways. And what we see there is that there are fluid devices. There's formats that work, that kind of a fit to it. There's driving emotion. The music is stunning. So the sonic and the music devices are super, super important. Boom. Well, go back. Just an example here. It's one of my favorite cartoons. So anyone who remembers or knows the advert, so here's our psycho killer trying to find someone. Auto glass repair, or get it in your head, auto glass replace. That is a sonic cue that's destroyed me so many times in the past, but look at the power of that. So we know without doubt not only the factors that create the most effective advertising, but the actual profit multipliers themselves. So you can see brand size and shares, we know, is right up at the top. We expected that. We learned that from Byron Sharp. There's a whole load of things in here, but well, hang on a minute. Creative execution is at number 2. That's kind of shit on me a little bit, hasn't it? So the second most important thing, and the only thing other than brand size and share, double jeopardy law, that has a double figure profit multiplier is creative execution. The reason is that marketing science gives us recipes to minimize failure. Creativity gives us the chance to succeed. This was going to be animated, but you know, Naeem didn't get it right for me. So imagine, maybe I'll kind of work my way down. So without creativity, McElroy's marketing foundations are inadequately executed in market. Sharp's mental availability has nothing memorable to build from. Romanic's distinctive assets lack impact and they're lost in a sea of same. Burnett and Phil's long fails to stay the course and the short underperforms. Kite's marketing mix can't ignite and build memory structures. Nelson Field's active attention isn't even engaged. And Wood's emotional connections are just not made. This is what Midjourney has made of Andy Nairn, who you'll be seeing later. So, lucky generals, go luck yourself. I decided to have him sat with a roulette wheel. I also used AI, ChatGPT, to get this quote, so I've got no idea if it's really true. One thing I will say at this point is I had some great quotes for that first bit of the legends, kind of poo-pooing on marketing science, and it turned out that none of them were true. I had a brilliant one from Dave Trott, and I love Dave Trott, and I did a great image of Dave Trott kind of with pitchforks and kind of burning torches, trying to burn down the scientists. You know, I couldn't use it because the quote didn't exist. But I'm attributing this to Andy Nairn, and he can tell us later whether it's real or not. The most effective marketing today is created by people who understand the importance of data, but also know how to use it to create compelling, emotional, human stories that resonate with people. This is why, like many of you, not all of you, I don't think AI is necessarily coming to take our jobs, because our jobs are to resonate with humans. And whilst AI can shortcut things, I mean, my deck wouldn't have looked as pretty as this. Sorry, I'm calling you pretty there, Andy. My deck wouldn't have looked as pretty as this without Midjourney, and I wouldn't have been able to dig up some kickstart quotes without ChatGPT. It's still taken me putting it together and standing up here making a fool of myself in a scientist jacket to make sense of it. So, science is a recipe. A recipe's been followed here for a sausage casserole. This is from the Facebook page Rate My Plate, which is famous for disgusting food. So this is a sausage casserole, sausage as they tend to call it. I don't know if it was Carol, she's the famous one. But people don't buy the sausage, they buy the sizzle. This is a sausage that's been prepared with love, with creativity. Someone's taken time over this, not just thrown out the sausage in a way that it can be eaten to keep you going. I want to eat that sausage, I don't want to eat the last one. And that's because of creativity. So, just to finish, marketing science gives us recipes to minimize failure, but it's creativity that gives us a chance to succeed. Thank you.